Today on the Topping Show, Starbucks fires a woman for being white and now must pay her millions. Trump promises to purge the deep state. Shyla Jackson attacks the Second Amendment. More businesses flee San Francisco. Stellantis is still debating Tesla Chargers. Oracle breaking records for their stock. Kava successfully launches their IPO. Temu wants to challenge Amazon.com. And JP Morgan settles Epstein victims for $270 million. All that and much, much more on The Topping Show. Thank you for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of Topping Show is sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, see their founder at least twice a day. Gotta say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or a business owner, you can use a little assistance. You can reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Going on to other political news, you have Trump, presidential nominee. He is promising to purge the deep state. Kind of like purging or draining the swamp, which he attempted to do round one. And although this came out a couple weeks ago, it is going viral now. So let's go ahead and play a little bit of his speech.
Here's my plan to dismantle the deep state and reclaim our democracy from Washington corruption once and for all. And corruption it is. First, I will immediately reissue my 2020 executive order restoring the president's authority to remove rogue bureaucrats, and I will wield that power very aggressively. Second, we will clean out all of the corrupt actors in our national security and intelligence apparatus.
That'd be nice, because they're there. Now, to give you some quantifiable data points of real-world examples in which there are people who have specifically broken orders, broken the law, and yet still completely hide from any responsibility and acquiesce from pretty much anything of doing the right thing. You have Representative Jim Jeffries, where during his presidency, Trump ordered the troops to leave Syria. He was curious of why the hell we're even there. There's not a war. We haven't declared anything. Let's get them out. So he gave an order as the president. Now, he was told, and the United States public were told, yep, we got the troops out. They're coming home. However, under oath, then Jim Jeffries admitted, oh yeah, they lied. Quote, we were always playing shell games to make it not clear to our leadership how many troops we had out there. Unquote. He later admitted that the total number of troops was, quote, a lot more, unquote, than the several hundred Trump wanted. Was Jim Jeffries disciplined in any way? Of course not. He's a government bureaucrat. He's set for life. Not elected, but appointed, and basically unprecedented job security. Think of the United States Postal Service as perhaps the most day-to-day interaction people can relate to in terms of having a job you can't possibly get fired from. But I continue.
And there are plenty of them. The departments and agencies that have been weaponized will be completely overhauled so that faceless bureaucrats will never again be able to target and persecute conservatives.
Which happened multiple times, as far back as when President Obama was in office. You had all the nonprofits and all the IRS targeted them. They targeted only one affiliated political group that was on the left. Every other one of them was on the right. Not a coincidence.
Christians or the left's political enemies, which they're doing now at a level that nobody can believe.
Also, when it comes to the missing documents, or not missing documents, rather the having inappropriate documents or documents not being stored properly, remember, Mike Pence was not charged. Hillary Clinton was not charged. She actually destroyed cell phones with hammers and used BleachBit, a software, to completely wipe her server, an on-prem server with all of her emails. She was not prosecuted. And, oh yeah, Biden was not prosecuted, and he had the classified documents with his old Corvette, which is a cool Corvette. I'll give him that much, but they all did that. And this probably also goes to say something about how we have too many classified documents just everywhere. But those three were not prosecuted, but Trump is. The government is fervently going after him specifically.
Even possible. Third, we will totally reform FISA courts, which are so corrupt that the judges seemingly do not care when they are lied to in warrant applications. So many judges.
Now, the FISA court was actually set up as a mechanism to try, ironically, to protect U.S. citizens' security and their privacy. It's rudimentarily speaking, it's how government agencies ask, hey, we need to do surveillance on Bobby down the street. And the courts will say, hey, this is yes or no constitutional, yeah, you can't. They said no like 3 times maybe. It's basically just a green light, yeah, you can do whatever you want. That's the big controversy around that court stems from that overwhelming number of the times they say yes.
Judges have seen so many applications that they know were wrong, or at least they must have known. They do nothing about it. They're lied to. Fourth, to expose the hoaxes and abuses of power that have been tearing our country apart, we will establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to declassify and publish all documents on deep state spying, censorship, and corruption. And there are plenty of them.
That'd be a huge achievement. But again, JFK tried to do a lot of this, and it didn't end well for him.
Fifth, we will launch a major crackdown on government leakers who collude with the fake news to deliberately weave false narratives and to...
It is also interesting that Trump's tax releases were inappropriately leaked, and no one faced any prosecution. It is an illegal act as personal sensitive data, but it got leaked. Also, remember the Supreme Court of the United States, where they're debating if Roe versus Wade was constitutional, or if they would overturn it and give the power of that issue of abortion to the states individually. That decision was pre-leaked. The data was out there about how they're going to vote before they actually released it to the public, which again, ironically kind of solidified their votes, because if they changed their votes, it would have shown that they would cave to the mob, which would not be a good thing for the United States. And yet, it's almost like they didn't even investigate who leaked that memo or who leaked that document. They just happened to never look into it, basically.
Subvert our government and our democracy. When possible, we will press criminal charges. Sixth, we will make every Inspector General's office independent and physically separated from the departments they oversee, so they do not become the protectors of the deep state. Seventh, I will ask Congress to establish an independent auditing system to continually monitor our intelligence agencies to ensure they are not spying on our citizens or running disinformation campaigns against the American people, or that they are not spying on someone's campaign like they spied on my campaign.
No one was prosecuted or held responsible for that in any way, by the way.
Eighth, we will continue the effort launched by the Trump administration to move parts of the sprawling federal bureaucracy to new locations outside the Washington swamp. Just as I moved the Bureau of Land Management to Colorado, as many as 100,000 government positions could be moved out, and I mean immediately, of Washington to places filled with patriots who love America, and they really do love America.
Not a bad idea to actually boost local economies, those small towns as well, and get people who don't want to live in D.C., because if you want to live in D.C., let's face it, you're going to be politically pushed one way.
Ninth, I will work to ban federal bureaucrats from taking jobs at the companies they deal with and that they regulate. So they deal with these companies and they regulate these companies, and then they want to take jobs from these companies. Doesn't work that way. Such a public display cannot go on, and it's taking place all the time, like with Big Pharma. Finally, I will push...
You can't help but notice the FDA, the federal department, the Federal Drug Administration. You see a lot of people going back and forth between the big pharma companies and that government entity. Coincidentally, I'm sure.
A constitutional amendment to impose term limits on members of Congress. This is how I will shatter the deep state and restore government that is controlled by the people and for the people. Thank you very much.
So that last part is huge. Again, most politicians never even touch the idea of term limits because most of them are self-serving, selfish bastards. Pardon the French. But actually, if he can get term limits, that would be unprecedented. The only time I've heard of any politician even whisper the idea, I believe about maybe 6 months ago, Ted Cruz and one of his colleagues put together a proposal. But even that would not go into effect for I believe like 8 years. quite some time. So they all would have a lot of run rate. But to actually limit some of those powers, so you have someone who's not in politics for 50 to 60 years. In terms of a political chess move and a move on the political chessboard, Trump, I think, made a pretty good one. I know there's a lot of independent voters and a lot of people in the middle who are quite frankly disgusted and annoyed with people who just have a career, being a career politician, and also people in government who just face no consequences. So in terms of increasing his voter base, this is a good way to do it, in my opinion. Because again, ever since I was in high school, everyone's talked about term limits and getting rid of people who are just lifelong government employees with no actual accountability or performance needed. If someone could actually execute on those ideals and really do it, that would be unprecedented. So, brilliant political chess move. He'll probably get a couple more votes after this, and granted, he's still being prosecuted with all the indictments. So, I think it's still an uphill battle, but time shall tell. It seems to be that he is making the right moves. Thank you everyone again for taking the time to tune in today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps the channel grow and develop. I've noticed that every time there's more and more comments, there's a lot more views. I greatly appreciate it. Also, don't forget to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone to stay safe and fight the good fight.